Jordan had always found comfort in routine. His days were predictable, even if they weren't always easy. He worked at a small diner in the heart of the town, where the clinking of plates, the hum of conversation, and the sizzle of food on the grill created a familiar rhythm to his life. At 24 years old, Jordan was already taking on more responsibility than most people his age. He wasn't just working for himself, he was supporting his younger siblings, trying to provide them with the stability they needed after their parents passed away in a car accident 2 years ago. He didn't mind it, though. Working long hours was better than the alternative. He loved his siblings and would do anything to ensure they were well taken care of. He had a quiet sense of pride in what he did, even if his paycheck was never quite enough to cover everything. He had always been taught that a person's worth wasn't measured by what they had, but by what they gave. And Jordan gave all he could. His time, his effort, and most importantly, his heart. On most days, the diner felt like a second home. The regulars were like family. Mrs. Harris, an elderly woman who came in every Wednesday with her granddaughter Lily, had been a fixture at the diner for as long as Jordan could remember. The two of them always sat at the same table by the window, tucked away in a quiet corner. Jordan had noticed Lily for a while now. The young girl, barely 12, always had a soft smile on her face but rarely spoke. She was different from the other children who visited the diner. While other kids were full of energy, talking about school, friends, and their latest adventures, Lily often sat quietly in her wheelchair, her gaze fixed on the world outside the window. It wasn't that she didn't want to engage, it was just that it seemed like she couldn't. Lily had a disability, one that kept her in the wheelchair most of the time. Her legs didn't work like other kids did, and she had a hard time walking or even standing. Her condition made it difficult for her to participate in activities that other children took for granted. Jordan had never asked her about it, but he knew it was something that affected her deeply. It was something she couldn't escape, no matter how much she tried to pretend otherwise. Still, there was something about Lily that drew Jordan in. Maybe it was the way her eyes lit up when she saw the animals in the park across the street from the diner, or the way she smiled just a little bit brighter when someone took the time to talk to her. He noticed how Mrs. Harris would always speak kindly to her, offering gentle encouragement when Lily seemed to retreat into herself. On that particular Wednesday, the diner was bustling more than usual. Jordan was busy taking orders, delivering plates, and chatting with customers as they came and went. It was just another day at the diner, but then he saw Lily and her grandmother walk in. Mrs. Harris was holding Lily's hand, gently guiding her to their usual table. It wasn't that unusual, but today something felt different. Lily's birthday was coming up, and Jordan had overheard Mrs. Harris talking about it the week before. It seemed like the birthday was going to be a small, quiet affair, just the two of them, maybe a small cake at home. Mrs. Harris mentioned that she didn't have much family left in town, and the people they knew had their own lives to live. It wasn't the first time Jordan had heard a story like that. In fact, it wasn't even the first time he had overheard Mrs. Harris talking about how lonely things could be for Lily. As Jordan took their order, he tried to keep the conversation light. He knew how difficult it could be for someone like Lily to feel like they fit in. He had seen it before in other kids, but something about Lily's quiet demeanor struck a chord with him. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Harris?" Jordan asked after placing their drinks on the table. "Lily looks like she's been having a rough day." Mrs. Harris smiled softly, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and concern. "Oh, she's just a bit tired, dear. It's hard for her sometimes, you know. But she's doing the best she can." She turned to Lily, who was looking out the window. "Aren't you, sweetie?" Lily didn't answer at first. She just nodded, her eyes still focused on the park across the street. Jordan could tell she didn't want to talk much today, but he could also sense a deeper longing in her silence. As Jordan began to walk away, something stopped him. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Lily's story, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. The loneliness, the quietness, it was as if she was trying to disappear into the background, never drawing attention to herself. Then, just as he was about to leave, Lily spoke up. "I don't think anyone will remember my birthday this year." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but the sadness in her words hit Jordan like a wave. He stopped in his tracks and turned to face her. Mrs. Harris looked at him, her expression apologetic. She knew how Lily struggled with her condition, and she knew how Lily hated the pity that often came with it. Jordan forced a smile. "I'm sure they will, Lily. You're a very special person." Lily didn't respond. She just smiled faintly, looking down at the table. Jordan couldn't let it go. There was something inside him that told him this wasn't just another birthday. This was something important, something that deserved to be remembered. That night, after his shift ended, Jordan sat alone at a small table in the back of the diner. He thought about what Lily had said. She didn't want a big party or a lot of attention, but Jordan could tell that what she really wanted was to be seen, to feel like she mattered. He could relate. After all, how many times had he felt invisible, working in the background, making sure everyone else's needs were met while his own were often overlooked? But this was different. Lily's wish was simple, almost painfully so. She didn't want presents or extravagant gifts. She just wanted to know that someone cared. Jordan sat there for a long time, thinking. He wasn't sure what he could do, but he knew that somehow he had to make it special for her, and so, in the quiet of the diner, with the evening fading into night, Jordan made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, as Jordan walked into the diner for his shift, something inside him felt different. There was a fire in his chest, a quiet excitement that he couldn't ignore. He was determined to make Lily's birthday special, even if he had to do it on his own. The thought of her sitting in the diner on her birthday, feeling overlooked and forgotten, was something Jordan couldn't bear. As he began setting up for the day, Jordan started thinking about how he could make it work. He didn't have much money, and his time was limited between his shifts and caring for his siblings. But the idea of giving Lily a day that was just for her, a day when she could feel loved and important, was something he couldn't walk away from. It was a slow morning at the diner, just a few customers filtering in and out. Jordan used the quiet time to think and plan. He knew he had to keep the surprise a secret, so he couldn't tell Mrs. Harris or Lily about it yet. But there were people in the diner who he thought might help. The regulars, the ones who came in day after day, knew Jordan well and often treated him like family. Maybe they could chip in, even if it was just a little. The first person he spoke to was Marty, a grizzled man in his late 60s who always sat at the counter, reading his newspaper and drinking black coffee. Marty had been coming to the diner for years, and he had a soft spot for the people who worked there. He'd been especially kind to Jordan since the loss of his parents. "Marty," Jordan said, leaning against the counter, "I've got a favor to ask." Marty looked up from his paper, raising an eyebrow. "What's on your mind, kid?" Jordan took a deep breath. "It's for Lily. Her birthday's coming up, and I want to do something nice for her. She doesn't have many friends, and Mrs. Harris said it's probably going to be a quiet day. I was thinking, maybe we could throw her a little party. Nothing big, just something to make her feel special." Marty took a long sip of coffee and thought for a moment. "That's a good idea, kid. A real good one." He scratched his chin, then grinned. "You're asking the right guy. I've got a few bucks saved up, and I bet the others would pitch in too. Let's make it happen." Jordan's face lit up with relief. "Thanks, Marty. I don't know what I would do without you." Marty waved him off. "We've all got to help each other out, right?" Encouraged by Marty's support, Jordan spoke to a few other regulars. Clara, a waitress who worked the late shift, promised to bring in a homemade cake. Steve, a local baker who often came in for coffee, offered to help with decorations. Even some of the other patrons chipped in. One man promised to bring balloons, while another offered to cover the cost of the cake. Slowly but surely, the pieces of the plan started to come together. Jordan couldn't believe how quickly people were willing to help. The kindness of strangers, or rather the kindness of people who had become like family over the years, was overwhelming. He felt a sense of community that he hadn't fully realized before. As the days passed, Jordan continued to plan the party in secret. He worked on the decorations during his breaks, cutting out paper stars and making simple birthday banners. He even found an old tablecloth at home that he could use for the party. It wasn't much, but it would be enough. The night before the party, Jordan stayed up late, making sure everything was ready. He hung up the decorations in the back corner of the diner, the one place where Lily and Mrs. Harris always sat. He carefully placed the balloons around the space, and he even set up a small table with a cake and a few wrapped gifts. As he stood back and looked at the setup, he felt a wave of pride. It wasn't fancy or extravagant, but it was made with love, and that's all that mattered. When the day finally arrived, Jordan woke up early, filled with a nervous energy. His shift started in the late morning, but he had to make sure everything was perfect. The plan was simple. When Lily and Mrs. Harris arrived for their usual lunch, Jordan would be ready. The party would be a complete surprise. He worked through the morning, keeping his eyes on the door. He couldn't wait to see the look on Lily's face when she walked in. Every time the door opened, Jordan's heart skipped a beat, hoping it was them. But it wasn't until about noon that Mrs. Harris and Lily finally walked through the door. Jordan was behind the counter when he saw them. His heart raced as he watched Mrs. Harris help Lily out of her wheelchair and into a booth. Lily looked as beautiful as ever, her curly hair shining in the light. She was wearing a soft pink dress that Jordan hadn't seen before. As they settled in, Jordan walked over to their table, trying to act casual. "Hey, Mrs. Harris, how's everything today?" "Everything's fine, dear. Just another day, you know," she replied, her eyes lighting up when she saw Jordan. Lily was staring out the window as usual, her gaze distant. Jordan noticed she was fidgeting with the edge of her dress, her fingers lightly touching the fabric. "Lily, how are you?" Jordan asked, kneeling down so he was eye level with her. "Excited for your birthday?" Lily smiled faintly but didn't respond. Jordan could see the sadness in her eyes. She was trying to put on a brave face, but it was clear that the idea of spending her birthday alone had already weighed heavily on her. "Don't worry, Lily," Jordan said softly. "We're going to make today special, I promise." Lily looked at him confused. "What do you mean?" she asked in a whisper, as if unsure what he was talking about. Just then, Jordan gave Mrs. Harris a quick nod. She smiled back at him, and that was the signal. Without saying another word, Jordan turned and walked toward the back of the diner. He quickly went into the kitchen, his heart pounding in his chest. He was about to pull off the biggest surprise of his life. When he came back out, the lights in the diner flickered for a moment. And then, just as planned, the music began. "Happy birthday to you." The sound of the song filled the room, and Jordan led a small group of regulars and staff members toward Lily's table. Her eyes widened in surprise as she looked around. There, in the corner, was a table covered with balloons, a large cake with her name written on it, and gifts stacked neatly on the side. For a moment, there was silence. Lily just stared, her mouth slightly open as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Mrs. Harris was in shock too, tears filling her eyes as she turned to Jordan. "Jordan, this is amazing," Mrs. Harris whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Lily slowly looked around, her face a mix of disbelief and joy. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. The people in the diner, people she had seen every day, had come together to make her feel seen. And then Lily did something Jordan hadn't expected. She smiled. It wasn't just a small, polite smile. It was a real smile, the kind of smile that lit up her entire face. She looked at Jordan, her eyes sparkling, and said, This is for me?" "Yes, Lily," Jordan said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is all for you." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. It was the happiest moment of her life. Lily couldn't stop smiling. The surprise party had caught her completely off guard, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly special. The room was filled with the sound of cheerful chatter, laughter, and the gentle hum of the music that was playing in the background. Jordan watched as Lily looked around, her eyes shining with excitement. He had never seen her look so alive. It wasn't just the decorations or the cake that made Lily's face light up. It was the fact that people cared. People who had barely spoken to her before, people who had only seen her as a quiet girl in a wheelchair, were now gathered around her, wishing her a happy birthday. They had all come together to celebrate her, and for Lily that meant more than anything. Mrs. Harris couldn't stop wiping her eyes, tears of joy streaming down her face. She was overcome with emotion, watching her granddaughter smile and laugh for the first time in what seemed like forever. She had always known that Lily was special, but now she could see that others could see it too. As the celebration continued, Jordan watched Lily carefully. She was shy, but there was a spark in her that had always been there, hidden under layers of self-doubt and loneliness. Slowly but surely, she was beginning to open up. One of the other regulars, Clara, brought over a small gift bag, smiling at Lily. "This is for you, sweetheart," she said, handing the bag over. Lily's eyes widened and she carefully opened it, pulling out a set of colorful art supplies. "I heard you like to draw," Clara said. "I hope these help you make some beautiful pictures." Lily's face lit up. She had always loved drawing, but it was something she never really got to share with anyone. Now she had new supplies, and for the first time she felt encouraged to keep going. She looked at Clara, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. As Lily explored the gifts and talked to the other guests, Jordan stepped back, quietly observing the scene. He had expected a small reaction, maybe a few words of thanks, but this was more than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just the party, it was the impact it had on Lily. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged, like she was a part of something bigger than herself. Jordan's mind wandered for a moment as he stood by the counter, watching Lily talk to the other customers. He thought about his own life, the struggles, the long hours, and the constant pressure to keep things together for his family. It hadn't been easy, but today it felt different. He had done something that mattered. He had made a difference in someone's life. The door to the diner opened and a group of people walked in, laughing and chatting. They looked around and stopped short when they saw the party. Mrs. Harris stood up from the table, her eyes immediately recognizing them. "Well, I'll be," she said softly. "That's my daughter and her family." Lily turned toward the door, her expression going blank for a moment. She hadn't seen her aunt, cousins, or even her mom in months. The last time they had been in touch had been just a quick phone call on a holiday, and since then she hadn't heard much from them. It wasn't that they didn't care, but it was clear that her family wasn't as involved in her life as they should have been. As her mother and cousins made their way over to the table, Lily's face softened and her hands started to fidget with the edge of her dress again. She hadn't expected them to show up. Mrs. Harris smiled, walking toward her daughter. "I didn't expect you here today." "What a surprise." Lily's mom gave her a tight hug, and for a moment she just stood there, unsure of what to say. "We didn't want to miss Lily's special day," she said. "We've just been busy." Lily glanced at her mother, a flicker of disappointment crossing her face. She had hoped for more from them, but the feeling of emptiness in her heart couldn't be shaken. This wasn't the first time they had shown up late or not at all. The people who were supposed to be there for her weren't always around when she needed them the most. But today wasn't about them. Today it was about the people who had shown up for her, the people who had made her feel valued. She turned back toward the table where the cake sat, where Jordan and the regulars were talking and laughing, and she smiled again. This party, this day, was something she would remember forever. Jordan noticed the shift in Lily's mood, but he didn't let it show. He wasn't sure what had happened between her and her family, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that she was here, surrounded by people who cared. Lily's mother stayed for a while, awkwardly making small talk with Mrs. Harris and the others, but it was clear that Lily wasn't fully engaged. She sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, occasionally glancing at her mom. It wasn't long before her mother and the rest of her family made their excuses and left, leaving Lily with Mrs. Harris and the people who had truly made her feel loved. As they said their goodbyes, Lily's mom looked over at Jordan. "Thank you," she said quietly, a look of recognition in her eyes. "Thank you for doing this for her." Jordan gave her a small nod, his smile warm but his heart heavy. "It was my pleasure," he said, though inside he couldn't help but wonder why it had taken so long for Lily's family to show up. Once they left, the energy in the diner shifted back to the joyful atmosphere it had been moments before. Jordan walked over to Lily's table where she was quietly nibbling on a piece of cake. "How are you holding up?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Lily looked up, her eyes still a little distant. "I didn't expect them to leave so soon," she said softly. "I thought maybe they'd stay longer. I thought maybe they'd care more." Jordan didn't know what to say at first. He had seen the look on Lily's face when her family left. He knew that feeling all too well. The disappointment, the sadness that came from expecting something that never quite arrived. "I'm sorry they couldn't stay longer," he said, his voice sincere. "But just know that you're not alone, Lily. You have people here who care about you. You matter to us." Lily's eyes met his, and for a moment there was no more sadness in them. Instead, there was a flicker of something else, a spark of hope. She smiled at him, a genuine smile, and for the first time that day her heart felt a little lighter. "I know. she said quietly. "Thank you, Jordan. I never thought anyone would do this for me." Jordan smiled back, his heart swelling with pride. "You deserve it, Lily. You deserve to feel special." The party went on for a while longer, and the laughter in the diner never died down. Jordan stayed by Lily's side, making sure she felt included, making sure she knew that today was about her. As the last of the guests left, Lily turned to Jordan one last time. "This was the best birthday I've ever had," she said, her voice full of gratitude. Jordan's heart swelled. It wasn't about the cake or the balloons or the gifts. It was about the love, the kindness, and the understanding that had surrounded Lily that day. It was about showing her that she was not forgotten, not overlooked. And as the lights dimmed in the diner and Jordan locked the door for the night, he couldn't help but feel like this was the beginning of something beautiful, something that went far beyond just one party. It was about building a community, a place where no one, especially not Lily, would ever have to feel alone again. The days after Lily's surprise birthday party passed in a blur, but the memory of that day stayed with Jordan. He'd never imagined that a simple act of kindness could change so much in someone's life, let alone his own. Lily had been glowing all week. Her smile was brighter, her eyes more alive. It was as if the party had unlocked something in her, something she had kept hidden away for so long. Jordan couldn't help but notice the difference in her every time she came into the diner. She was more talkative now, smiling at the other customers, even starting to ask questions about their lives. It wasn't much, but it was progress, and to Jordan that was everything. One afternoon, as he was wiping down the counter, Clara, the late shift waitress, stopped by to chat. She had a soft spot for both Jordan and Lily, and had been one of the main people helping him with the party. She had seen how much it meant to him, and it hadn't escaped her that Lily was slowly starting to change too. "You've done something incredible, you know," Clara said, as she poured herself a cup of coffee. "I've seen a lot of people come and go through this diner, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone do something like you did for Lily. You gave her a piece of herself back." Jordan shrugged, trying not to get too emotional. "It wasn't just me, Clara, it was all of us. The people here, they stepped up when I needed them. They showed up for Lily, and that's what really made the difference." Clara smiled knowingly. "You're too humble, Jordan. Sometimes all it takes is one person to spark something in another, and you did that. You saw Lily, really saw her." Jordan glanced over at Lily, who was sitting at a table near the window, her head down as she scribbled something in a notebook. He had noticed that she had been spending more time drawing lately, and it was clear that she was lost in her own little world when she worked on her art. But what caught his attention the most was that she wasn't alone anymore. Several people had started to sit with her during their breaks, chatting with her, asking her about her drawings. It was small, simple gestures, but it made all the difference to Lily. Jordan could see it in her posture. She wasn't as withdrawn anymore. There was a lightness to her that hadn't been there before. "I hope it lasts," Jordan said softly, more to himself than to Clara. "I hope she keeps going. Keeps opening up." Clara followed his gaze and nodded. "She will, Jordan. You gave her something more than just a birthday party. You gave her a sense of belonging, and people don't forget that easily." As the days turned into weeks, Jordan found himself thinking about Lily more and more. He had always been someone who kept his head down, focused on work and family. But there was something about Lily's transformation that made him realize just how powerful a little kindness could be. He had expected her to thank him, to maybe acknowledge what he had done for her, but she never really had to. It was in the way she carried herself now, in the way she spoke to others, and the way her face lit up when she saw a familiar face. It wasn't just Lily who was changing. Jordan was too. The people at the diner had noticed how much more confident he had become. He wasn't just the quiet waiter anymore. He was someone who had made a real impact in someone's life. He had always known that he was meant for something more than just flipping burgers and pouring coffee, but he hadn't known how to make that happen. Now it felt like things were falling into place. One afternoon, as Jordan was finishing up his shift, he saw Mrs. Harris walk in. She was holding Lily's hand as usual, but today there was something different about her. She looked more relaxed, more at peace. Jordan knew something had shifted in their lives, and he couldn't wait to hear about it. "Mrs. Harris, how are you doing?" he asked, greeting her as she sat down. "I'm good, Jordan," Mrs. Harris replied, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "In fact, we're both doing better than we have in a long time." Jordan raised an eyebrow, surprised. What do you mean? Mrs. Harris leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. Lily's been getting out more. She's been talking to people. It's like she's finally found her place. She's even been going to the park with me, and I've been hearing from some of the other parents in the neighborhood that she's been joining in on activities. She's opening up, Jordan. I don't know how to thank you for what you did for her. Jordan felt his chest tighten with emotion. It was one thing to see the changes in Lily, but hearing them from someone else made it feel even more real. He had given Lily a chance, a space where she could belong, and now she was finding her own way. You don't need to thank me, he said, his voice a little rough. I just wanted to help. You did more than that, Mrs. Harris said, her eyes welling with tears. You've given her something I've been trying to give her for years, a sense of confidence. You've made her believe in herself again, and that's more than I could ever ask for. Jordan nodded, his throat tight. He wasn't sure what else to say, so he just smiled. It felt like the first real smile he'd had in a long time. As the weeks went by, Jordan began to notice that things were changing at the diner too. The regulars who had helped with the party were now even more supportive of each other. There was a new sense of community in the diner, a bond that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just about coffee and breakfast anymore. It was about the people who came together to share their lives, their stories, and their support. One morning, Jordan was surprised when one of the customers, a young man named Ben, stopped him before he left his shift. Ben was a quiet guy who came in every morning for coffee, but they had never really spoken beyond the usual pleasantries. Hey, Jordan, I've been meaning to ask you, Ben said, his voice hesitant. About that party for Lily. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I just wanted to say. I don't know if you realized it, but that party didn't just change Lily. It changed a lot of us too. It made me think about how we can all do more for people, how we can make someone feel like they matter. Jordan smiled, his heart warming. That was the idea. Just a little kindness, you know? Ben nodded. It's funny. I thought I was too busy, too caught up in my own life to really pay attention. But after that party, I realized I've been missing out on a lot of chances to make a difference. Jordan looked at him surprised. You've got that right. Every little bit counts. Ben smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. Thanks for reminding me of that, Jordan. I won't forget it. As Ben walked out, Jordan felt a sense of pride that he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just a waiter anymore. He wasn't just someone who got by. He was someone who had made a real difference in the world. And as he locked up the diner that night, Jordan realized something else. It wasn't just about the party. It wasn't just about giving someone a moment of happiness. It was about the ripple effect, the way one act of kindness could spread, changing lives in ways no one could predict. He thought about Lily again, how far she had come, how much she had grown. And he thought about how she had helped him grow too. In the end, Jordan knew that the best gift he could give to anyone wasn't just a party or a moment of joy. It was the gift of seeing people for who they truly were. That was the kind of change that mattered. As the months passed, Jordan continued to see Lily regularly at the diner, but now it felt different. There was something undeniably changed in her, a quiet strength that wasn't there before. Every time she walked in, there was a warmth in her smile and a new spark in her eyes. She had begun to truly open up to the world around her. She no longer sat quietly in the corner, lost in her own thoughts. Instead, she'd talk with anyone who approached her, even the shyest customers, sharing little snippets of her life. Jordan was amazed at how much she had changed. The shy girl who barely spoke now had a voice, one that people were eager to listen to. Her art had become a big part of her identity. She would often bring her sketchbook to the diner, working on her drawings as she sipped on hot chocolate or nibbled at the pastries. The regulars had come to look forward to seeing her sketches, and many of them would ask to see what she was working on, offering compliments and encouragement. Lily had begun to make friends outside of the diner too. She was now attending a weekly art class in town, a place where she could interact with other kids her age who shared her love for painting and drawing. Mrs. Harris often mentioned how proud she was of her granddaughter, and how it seemed like Lily was finally finding her own way in the world. But even though Lily was blossoming, Jordan couldn't help but feel a deep sense of responsibility for the role he had played in her transformation. He had never intended for the small act of kindness to turn into something so impactful, but here he was, watching a young girl discover her own strength and confidence, all because he had taken a chance on making her birthday special. One afternoon, as Jordan finished up his shift, Mrs. Harris pulled him aside. She looked more tired than usual, her eyes shadowed with concern. It was rare for her to look anything but cheerful. So Jordan immediately took notice. "Jordan, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice a little shaky. "Of course, Mrs. Harris," Jordan replied, his concern growing. "What's going on?" "It's about Lily," she said, her voice dropping. "I'm worried about her." Jordan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "She's doing so well. I thought everything was going great for her." Mrs. Harris hesitated for a moment, her eyes welling up. "She's doing better, but there's something she's not telling me. She's still carrying a lot of weight, Jordan. I can see it in the way she holds herself sometimes, the way she shuts down when she thinks no one's looking. It's like she's afraid to let go of the past, and I don't know how to help her with that." Jordan's mind raced. He had noticed the same thing a few times, but he hadn't thought much of it. He had always seen Lily as someone who was resilient, someone who was learning to thrive. But now that Mrs. Harris mentioned it, he could see what she meant. Despite her newfound confidence, Lily still had moments where she seemed distant, withdrawn. There were times when she would draw for hours, lost in her art, and he wondered if it was her way of escaping. I think I need to talk to her," Jordan said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "Maybe there's something I can do to help." Mrs. Harris gave him a soft smile. "I think that's exactly what she needs, Jordan. You've always been there for her. I just don't want to see her slip back into that shell she was in before. She's been through so much already." Jordan nodded, determination building within him. He had come to care deeply for Lily, and he couldn't stand the thought of her retreating into herself again. He needed to be there for her, just as he had been when he helped organize the party. The next day, Jordan found himself walking over to Lily's table as she sat, sketching in her notebook. She looked peaceful, lost in her own world. He stood there for a moment, watching her before gently clearing his throat. "Hey, Lily," he said softly. Lily looked up, her face breaking into a warm smile when she saw him. "Hi, Jordan," she said, closing her notebook and pushing it aside. "How's it going?" Good, Jordan said, taking a seat across from her. "I was just thinking about you. I wanted to talk for a minute, if that's okay." Lily's smile faltered slightly, and for a brief moment Jordan saw the same guarded look he had noticed before. She nodded but didn't say anything, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her notebook. "Lily," he began, his tone gentle but sincere. "I know things have been changing for you. You've been making so much progress, and I can see how much you've grown, but I also know there are times when you seem distant, like you're carrying something that's hard to let go of." Lily's eyes dropped to the table, and she didn't speak for a long while. Jordan waited patiently, not pushing her, just offering a space for her to open up when she was ready. After what felt like an eternity, she finally looked up, her eyes filled with vulnerability. "I don't know how to talk about it," Lily whispered. "I don't want to bother anyone. Everyone's been so nice to me, and I don't want to disappoint them." Jordan's heart broke at her words. "Lily, you're not a burden. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. I can't pretend to know exactly what you've been through, but I do know that you don't have to hide it. You've already done so much by opening up to people here, and you've got people who care about you." Lily shook her head. "But I'm still different. I'll always be different. I just don't know how to be the person everyone wants me to be." Jordan reached across the table, gently placing a hand over hers. "You don't have to be anyone else, Lily. You just have to be you. And you're enough just as you are. It's okay to be different. That's what makes you special." Lily looked at him, her eyes full of uncertainty. For a moment, Jordan wasn't sure if his words had reached her. But then slowly a small smile tugged at her lips. I guess I've been afraid of that. Afraid of being myself. Afraid of not fitting in. Lily, you've been fitting in more than you know," Jordan said, his voice warm. "You've made more of an impact than you realize. And not just on the people here, but on me too. You've taught me that it's okay to be open, to care about others." Lily's smile grew a little wider, her eyes softening. "You really think that?" "I know that," Jordan replied firmly. "You've come so far, and you're not alone anymore. You've got people who care about you. People who see you just as you are." For the first time in a long time, Lily looked at him with a new sense of hope in her eyes. It wasn't just about being seen, it was about feeling heard. And for the first time, she felt like she was starting to understand that it was okay to embrace all the parts of herself, even the ones that scared her. As the weeks went by, Jordan continued to support Lily in every way he could. He helped her find new ways to express herself, whether through art or simply by talking about her fears and dreams. He reminded her, time and time again, that she was worthy of love and kindness, and that she didn't have to hide who she was. By the time summer arrived, Lily had made incredible strides. She was no longer the quiet, withdrawn girl who sat in the corner. She was vibrant, confident, and ready to face the world. She had formed deep connections with the people around her, and her art had become a powerful form of self-expression. For Jordan, watching Lily's transformation had been one of the most rewarding experiences of his life. But it wasn't just about Lily. He had grown too. He had learned that kindness had the power to change lives, not just for the people you help, but for yourself as well. And as he watched Lily laugh with her new friends, sharing stories of her latest artwork and dreams of the future, he knew that this was just the beginning for her. There was so much more to come, and he couldn't wait to see where her journey would take her. As the days grew warmer and the summer months settled in, things at the diner felt different. There was a quiet sense of community that hadn't been there before, an unspoken understanding between the regulars, the staff, and even the newcomers who came in for a cup of coffee or a meal. And at the center of it all was Lily, who now came to the diner more often, sitting with a group of new friends she had made through her art class. The transformation in her was undeniable, and Jordan couldn't help but feel proud of how far she had come. Every time he saw her walk through the door with that bright smile on her face, he remembered the quiet, uncertain girl who had sat in the corner, barely speaking to anyone. Now she was a completely different person, confident, open, and full of life. She had become part of the diner's heartbeat, a fixture in the community, just like the regulars who had supported her from the beginning. Lily's art was starting to get noticed in the town as, well, Mrs. Harris had told Jordan that Lily's teacher had nominated her work for a local art show. It was the first time Lily had ever shown her art outside of the safety of her sketchbook, and she was nervous, unsure if people would like her work. But Jordan could see the pride in her eyes when she talked about it, even if she didn't quite believe in herself yet. One afternoon, as Jordan was cleaning up after a rush, he saw Lily sitting at her usual spot by the window, sketching in her notebook. Her friends had left for the day and she was alone, but there was a calm about her, a sense of contentment that had taken years to develop. He couldn't help but walk over to her just to check in. "Hey there, how's the art coming?" Jordan asked, his voice light but with a hint of genuine curiosity. Lily looked up from her sketchbook and smiled. "It's going okay. I'm working on a piece for the art show next week." Jordan grinned. "That's awesome. You must be excited." Lily's smile wavered for a second and she bit her lip. "I'm excited but also nervous. What if people don't like it? What if they don't understand it?" Jordan took a seat across from her, leaning forward, his expression serious. "Lily, your art is incredible. It's a part of you, and that's what makes it special. People can see that. They can feel the emotion in your work. You don't need to worry about whether they like it or not. It's your voice, and that's all that matters." Lily's eyes softened as she listened to him. She had heard these kinds of words before, but this time they felt different. They felt like the truth. "I guess you're right," she said quietly. "It's just hard to believe sometimes. I've always kept my art to myself, and now I'm showing it to the world." "You're showing it to the world because you deserve to," Jordan replied. "You've worked so hard, and it's time for everyone to see what you've been creating. You're ready." Lily looked at him for a moment as if she was trying to find the right words. Then she smiled again, her eyes twinkling. "Thanks, Jordan. I'm glad you believe in me." "I always will," Jordan said, smiling back at her. "You've got so much potential." "Lily, and this is just the beginning." The following week, the art show came, and with it came a mix of excitement and nerves for Lily. She had spent hours perfecting her piece, a vibrant portrait of a girl with a bright, bold expression, a reflection of Lily herself. The piece captured the strength and beauty that had been hidden for so long, and Lily was proud of it, even if she wasn't fully convinced that others would be. The night of the show, Jordan found himself at the community center, looking for Lily among the crowd of people. There were so many faces, some familiar and others not. He spotted Mrs. Harris right away, standing by the refreshment table, a wide smile on her face as she spoke to a few people. "Mrs. Harris," Jordan called out, walking over to her. "Where's Lily?" "Oh, she's over there," Mrs. Harris said, pointing toward the display boards. "She's been so nervous, but I think she's starting to feel better. I've never seen her this excited about something." Jordan followed her gaze and spotted Lily standing near a large board filled with artwork. She was talking to a couple of other artists, explaining her piece with a quiet confidence that surprised him. She was still shy, but there was a grace in the way she spoke, a clarity in her words that made it clear she had something to say. He made his way toward her, and when she saw him, her face lit up. "Jordan, you made it." "Of course I did," he said with a grin. "I wouldn't miss it for the world. Your piece looks amazing." Lily's face flushed and she looked down at the floor, a little embarrassed. "Thanks, I'm just glad it's over. I've never shown my work like this before." Jordan gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did great. You should be proud of yourself." Lily looked up at him, and for the first time in a long while she seemed to truly believe it. "I think I am," she said, her voice soft but sure. The rest of the evening was a blur of people admiring her work, asking her questions, and congratulating her on the piece. It was overwhelming, but in the best way possible. By the time the event was winding down, Lily was exhausted but beaming with pride. As the crowd began to thin out, Jordan and Mrs. Harris walked over to her. "You did it, Lily," Mrs. Harris said, her voice thick with emotion. "You showed the world who you are." Lily smiled, looking at her grandmother and then at Jordan. "I guess I did. And I think I can keep doing it." "I know you can," Jordan said, his voice full of confidence. "This is just the beginning. You've got so much more to share." And he meant it. There was no doubt in his mind that Lily was on the cusp of something bigger, something incredible. The way she had stepped into the world that night, confident and proud, was just the start. She was ready to take on whatever came next. The weeks that followed were filled with more changes and more growth for Lily. She continued to attend her art class and began working on more pieces, some of which she even sold to people who had seen her work at the show. Her connection with the local art community deepened, and she became known as the girl who had once been quiet and reserved, but had turned into a true artist, unafraid to show the world her vision. Jordan watched all of this unfold, amazed at how far she had come. He had always believed in her, but now he saw it for himself. Lily was becoming the person she had always been meant to be. One evening, as they closed up the diner, Lily came in for a late cup of tea, something she had started doing regularly. Jordan was cleaning the counter when she sat down, a smile on her face, her eyes full of excitement. "Jordan, you won't believe it," she said, her voice full of energy. "I got accepted into a prestigious art program. It's a huge opportunity and it's everything I've ever wanted." Jordan's heart swelled with pride. "Lily, that's amazing." "I knew you could do it." Lily nodded, her smile never fading. "I couldn't have done it without you, Jordan. You were the one who made me believe I could. You were the one who showed me that I'm enough just as I am." Jordan looked at her, his throat tight with emotion. "You always were enough, Lily. You just needed to see it for yourself." And with that, they both understood. The journey they had been on together had changed them both, in ways they couldn't have imagined. Lily was no longer the girl who sat in the corner, unsure of her place in the world. She was an artist, a young woman who knew her worth and who was ready to face whatever challenges came next. And Jordan? Well, he had found something in himself too. The quiet, uncertain young man who had once wondered if he was making a difference, now knew that even the smallest act of kindness could change everything. And as they sat together that evening, sipping tea and talking about the future, both of them knew that this was just the beginning. Together they had built something beautiful, a friendship, a bond, and a life filled with possibilities.